Hello everyone. Well, this time this video is a little bit different from my normal videos. I'm not in my home office like I usually am. I'm actually away somewhere incredibly beautiful. I won't tell you where it is. Just on a short little break. But I felt compelled that I have to actually say a few words about what's going on with the announcement that we heard from the US last week. First is I think this is obviously politics, so we have to take that with a grain of salt, and I expect that these statements are more political than really economically or logically driven. But we should really understand what they said and what it really means, because the headlines are often quite misleading. The most important thing to understand is that this really only affects one of the three main permits that a US project needs. So to review, a US project needs the FERC approval. And the FERC is really your safety environmental construction permit. And FERC is an independent body that does not report to the president, reports to the Congress. And so any presidential candidate has no say over what FERC does. The second two permits are actually from the DOE, the Department of Energy. Now, the government, it should be not partisan at all, these departments, but unfortunately the ruling party gets to decide on the Secretary of the Energy, and thus the whole agency becomes political, whether it likes it or not. So we're really talking about the DOE non-FTA permit and the DOE FTA permits. So the DOE FTA permits are something that by law they have to grant because it's a free trade agreement and the US wants to promote free trade. So a handful of countries in the world, unfortunately not many of them are major gas LNG importers, have free trade agreements with the US. Singapore, Mexico, Canada, a few other random countries like that. So what typically happens is when you start a project like I did a few months ago, 2 years ago, is you first get a site, obviously, you have a concept, and then you apply for the DOE permit, and you'd ask them to agree on the full volume that you can export. And you ask them if you can export that to both free trade countries and non-free trade countries. So that really means every country that the US does not have sanctions against, which is only 4 or 5 countries that has sanctions against. What typically happens is that within a very short period of time, you receive the FTA permit. And that really is the Department of Energy saying, look, supply-demand balances are good in the US, and your project is not going to make much of a difference in everything. And that's kind of where we have with Gulfstream. Gulfstream has received its FTA permit. Not a problem. Now, after you get the FTA permit, you typically then apply for the FERC permit, and that takes 3 to 5 years. So that 3 to 5 year period is where you have to then show the government that you're environmentally safe and you're not going to make an impact and you're doing the right thing and you're providing the jobs, et cetera, and you have a safety plan and your project makes a lot of sense from the safety, construction, engineering point of view. And that's where you also do your FEED. After you get your FERC permit, at that point, the government actually reviews your non-FTA DOE permit. That is the permit that is put on hold right now. So who does it really impact? It doesn't impact Gulfstream because we haven't started our FERC process yet. We hope to actually start that very, very soon. We have received a little bit of funding, so that's very exciting. And we're looking for more equity funding, but we're going to start that FERC process within a few weeks, I hope. Let's just see how that goes. But it doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect projects like us. There are no other projects like us. As I said, we'll be the first new project in the FERC process in 4 years. However, it affects projects that are still waiting for the DOE non-FTA permit. And that means projects that have the FERC permit and now hoping that they have got their DOE non-FTA pretty soon. These are projects like Commonwealth and some others that have their FERC permit but don't have the DOE non-FTA permit. All projects that had the non-FTA permit that have lapsed. Those non-FTA permits only last about 7 years. So if you haven't started construction in the 7 years, the government can actually ask you to do something about it. I'm just going to excuse some people walking by, but I'm going to continue my little video in a minute. As you can see, I'm on a hiking trail, so it's kind of exciting. So what we're talking about is those projects that have got their FERC permit, but had received their non-FTA, and that FTA permit has now lapsed. These are people like Lake Charles LNG and and Magnolia LNG. And the last group it affects is people who are finishing up their FERC permit and hoping that within a short period of time, they would get their non-FTA permit. And those are maybe CP2 and some other projects like that. So in a nutshell, it doesn't affect projects like Gulfstream. Of course, perception is bad. American government should really stay out of the business. I think business doesn't like uncertainty. We obviously see that this is not a good thing for anybody. The American reputation is at stake. I think the American government should realize, of course, that we have been exporting LNG for about 8 years now. We are now potentially the world's largest exporter. Qatar and us kind of bounce back and forth, but we have a lot more upside than anybody else. And during those 8 years, we have actually seen gas production in America increase maybe 50%, maybe even more. And gas prices have actually been flat. So who's benefited? It's the American consumer that's benefited. They have a lot more supply. American industry has a lot more supply. Prices have not been impacted. In the meantime, we have received billions and billions of dollars of foreign direct investment into the US. We have received lots of goodwill from the US strategically to export LNG to the world. We have provided lots and lots of jobs. A lot of these jobs in communities that are usually not so well off. Now, I agree that the community relationship could be better, and the company should do a better job of promoting economic justice. Gulfstream has pledged to do that, but other people may not make that pledge. But it really only affects, but the point is that American LNG has been good for everybody, and it's great for the world because every cargo that America exports, and America has exported to 35 countries, I think, or maybe even 40 countries. We've exported to all these 35 countries, and every cargo there is potentially displacing coal in another part of the world. And that's really the key here. So if the government's ambition is to control the climate, or, to control emissions around the world, well, we have to think of it globally, and it actually has failed. This announcement doesn't help because all it does is push people towards coal because LNG will potentially get higher, more expensive because less American gas will come to the stream. So that's something to think about as well. So, in a nutshell, it doesn't affect Gulfstream right now. It affects perception. It affects American credibility, reputation. I wish it wasn't a political thing, but I think it is. And let's hope that this will blow over and we can get on with business as usual and cooler minds will prevail. Thanks. Bye. From somewhere great. Bye.